Thank you guys for coming. This is kind of a collaboration between engineering school, business school. We want to do more things together, and we just believe that God has put you as students here in the business school and the engineering school to collaborate together, and we look forward to doing that more as we, by God's grace and by God's inspiration, launch new products, new businesses, and we'll collaborate together in doing that. But we got a special guest today, Joel Manby, and he is the former CEO of major corporations. God's blessed him in a number of different positions over time and given him a lot of skill over time. He was valedictorian when he was in college. Interesting note is he also tried out for the Detroit Tigers in baseball, so athletically, academically, is just at the top of his game. But more than that, he has a relationship with Jesus Christ, which is the main reason why we invited him to speak to us today, because I believe that God has a word to say to each of us today. Everyone that's here in this room, everyone that's listening online, those that will hear the live stream that's being recorded later, there's something that God wants to say to you. So my prayer is that all of our ears will be opened to what does God want to say to you. And as a result, your heart will be transformed and the way you live your life will be different because of the words that you heard today. And so I don't know if we can, our tech guys can pull Joel Manby up. There's Joel right there. I see you there, Joel.
How are you?
Excellent. And thank you for joining us today. We're so glad that you joined us. I believe you're in Naples, Florida. Is that right?
I am. I am in Naples, and it's a beautiful view out the window of the ocean, so I'm very, very fortunate. But it's good to be with you all.
So the next time that we invite you, maybe we'll come down there and and have
happy to do that.
Oh yeah. All right.
I'd rather be in Lynchburg I'd rather be in Lynchburg in the summer though than down here. So it all works.
Excellent. So you'll come down here in the summer, and we'll come there in the winter, and
absolutely,
we'll work it out. But thank you for speaking with us today. I know that God's put something on your heart to share. There are a lot of things that you could share. You wrote the book Love Works. I believe recently you updated that book, added some more content to it. But I believe that God really has something he wants to say to you. So we're just going to give you the floor to share what God's put on your heart. We've got some students on stage here from the business school, engineering school, that are going to field some questions. And just looking forward to what God's going to do during this time. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that introduction. And hey, everybody, how are you? It is really exciting for me to be here. I spend some of my semi-retirement time dedicated to talking about love as a leadership principle. And I really want to do that, but I have to, I appreciate the introduction, but it's a little bit of a stretch that I was that close to the Detroit Tigers. In fact, I did try out. I went to one of those tryout camps, and I made the running and throwing cut. But then in the hitting, you have to face the pitchers who are throwing 90 miles an hour plus. And I look like a ceiling fan up there. I don't think I even fouled off a pitch. So it was a pretty rude awakening that I was not called to be a professional athlete. I was called to be in business. And I really feel that what I'm going to talk to you about is my calling, and I know it's the message that God wants me to share with you all. And I put some slides together just so you have a context of what I'm talking about. I think it's easier to see it and then just hear it. But what we're going to share for the next 25-ish minutes or so is love as a leadership principle. And I know as believers, you've heard about love in a lot of contexts, but as a leadership principle, whether it's a for-profit business or not-for-profit business, it's something that's not talked about very often. And I'm going to really answer three questions in our time together. Why am I talking about it? Why we even talk about love? And then thirdly, what is love? Because it is very misunderstood as I've been out in the business world. And so that's really the first question, why me? And I think I don't have time to go into my complete story. I'll give you the highlights, but I have led in both environments. I have led in environments that are very difficult, not loving in any way, shape, or form, and I've led in environments that were. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this time together, is that love does work. I've done it both ways, and I know that it does work as a leadership principle. And I also want you to take down any questions I'm talking. If something doesn't resonate, please, please, please write down a question. We're going to go to Q&A, and I love answering your questions, and I'll answer anything, anywhere you want to go. So as far as my background, Mark mentioned some of it. I've been CEO of 4 different companies. Saturn I started with, that was an auto company. Saab was an auto manufacturer in the United States. When General Motors went bankrupt in 2007 in the financial crisis we had, they were not allowed to sell in the United States anymore. They're still in China. And then in the auto industry, I was also with an Amazon startup that most of you are too young or weren't even born in 2000, but back then Amazon actually sold cars on the internet, and that was our startup. And in the dot-com implosion, we ended up having to sell that company to our biggest competitor. But I thought I would share this very, very old picture, which you all know Jeff Bezos, or at least you know of him, the CEO of Amazon. This is the picture when Jeff and I launched this joint venture back in 2000. And you can see there's been a lot of years there, but Jeff won the net worth battle for sure, but I at least won the hair battle. So that was good. But he's a good man in some ways, very, very competitive. But the thing about the auto experience that I want to summarize is it was an autocratic, kind of fear-based culture. And a lot of you are going into engineering, you're going into business. And although some things have changed, I think many of these companies still have very more autocratic and sometimes fear-based culture. I think they've come a long way in the last 20 years. I don't think it's as bad, but I do want to prep you that sometimes you'll get into situations where you don't agree with how the leaders lead. And I can encapsulate my auto experience, kind of 20 years, to say most of the time, I had an angst in my soul. I knew there was a better way to lead, but it wasn't being modeled to me. And it wasn't until I got to the theme park industry, which I was CEO of a company called Hershey Entertainment. You haven't heard of that organization, but you've recognized some of their brands like Dollywood. We ran all of Dolly Parton's theme parks. I'll tell a Dolly story a bit later. Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri, the Harlem Globetrotters, you may have gone and seen one of their entertainment games. And then I left Hershey after almost 15 years and ran SeaWorld Entertainment, which is a theme park company that went through all kinds of difficult situations about 4 or 5 years ago. So those 20 years were in the theme park industry is really where I learned about love works. And what happened in a nutshell is I was on the board of Hershey Entertainment while I was CEO of Saab, and I was asked to become CEO of the company. And in my first year as CEO, we were asked to be on the CBS reality show called Undercover Boss. And some of you, it's still on Netflix. I encourage you, if you ever want to see a fun reality show, it's a pretty good show. It's the first couple seasons. But the premise is the CEO goes undercover, works with the frontline employees, and then at the end of the show, it's revealed to the employees that the boss was really the person working with them. And this was the first season, so they had no idea that what was going on. They were told it was a training video for a new employee, and so they literally had no idea what was going on. So this is the logo from Undercover Boss, but I'm going to try to show a short 3-minute clip from it because I want to show you the impact that our giving foundation had on these employees where we were unselfish to them. It's one of the acts of love that I'm going to go into, but then I want to explain to you what happened after this show was aired, which was it's a phenomenal story. So I'm going to try to share it here, and we did it a little technical rehearsal, so hopefully I'll pull up here. Can you guys see it? Can I see it? Just raise your hands if you guys can see it, because I can't see the screen. All right, you can? Okay, perfect. All right, so let's just run it, and I'll come right back on after that.
Joel Manby CEO of Person Family Entertainment, is undercover in his own company. His coworkers think he's being filmed for a documentary about someone trying out entry-level jobs.
Morning, Albert. Hey, this is John Briggs. He's going to be working with you today.
Come here, John. We'll get you on a turnstile.
Okay, let's do it.
This is all about your first impressions. So it's really a fun experience. I grew up at this park. I've been on this park since I was 2 years old. I have all these ideas about theme parks and stuff. It's not just a place I work. It's my passion. I have to work to go to school, and I'm trying to go to school for work. I'm just doing 10 hours a semester, and then working 40 plus hours a week also.
What do you think the ideal job is here?
I would like to eventually be a CEO of Persian Properties.
Who's in that job now?
Joel Manby is our CEO.
Well, I have a lot of emotion for Albert. I really respect his passion and energy. That's great because you can channel that. And it definitely makes me want to try to help in some way.
My name's Richard.
Hi, Richard. I'm John.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So just open it up and turn the black part.
Whoa. Come back behind you. Whoa, sorry, man. Don't get my boss.
I'm telling you, it's already got me wet.
Whoops.
You might just stay behind me.
Where do you live?
I live in Galena because 2 years ago we lost our house in a flood. It was rough because we actually lived in a pop-up camper at first. We didn't have a place to go right then. So we still got quite a bit of work to do.
You're a hardworking man. I was overwhelmed hearing that. His whole home being wiped out from a flood. Everything is gone. And he's still working his way through that. Now it's time for me to reveal my true identity to each of the people I worked with over the past week. I'm actually Joel Manby, and I'm CEO of Persian Entertainment.
No, that was you. Okay. Oh man. That's a pretty good. You got me.
Richard, you are a very special man. You have a really special heart.
Thank you.
And we're very lucky to have a man like you.
Appreciate it.
That story about losing your home really touched me. And what I'd like to do is, for your home, allocate the full $10,000 of catastrophic funds that we have available to help you redo your house.
You got me good.
You've inspired me to start a scholarship program. You're going to get to go to school full time. So you don't have to work all day. You don't have to go to school at night. We're going to actually pay you your 40 hours a week salary while you go to school. We need a lot of people like you with your kind of passion, your kind of enthusiasm.
First thing I'm calling is my parents. I'm going to be jumping up and down while I'm telling them, and I'm going to hear my dad. I know he's going to be so proud.
That's pretty emotional, isn't it? I've seen that quite a few times, and it's still very emotional. But what happened that's so amazing is that program followed the NCAA quarterfinals, which happens. We have the national finals tonight for men, yesterday for women, and 20 million people saw that show. And our company was just inundated with letters and emails and notes that basically all said the same thing. They were frustrated with their leadership. They wanted something more loving, more caring. They wanted a culture more like what they saw on that television show. And what I realized is I wasn't the only one with this angst in my soul. I wasn't the only one longing for more. I thought it was just me. And so this experience that I just shared, being on the show, and the tremendous response from the audience that viewed it, is what prompted me to write Love Works. Is I really wanted something out there that encouraged people like you, everyone watching this, everybody sitting in that auditorium, that if you come across leadership that you don't think is right, you guys can make a difference. You know now at 20, 18, 22, whatever your age is, that you can make a difference and that love does work. And so I just want to make sure that you all understand that and realize that at the age that you are, because I unfortunately, I was about 40 years old before I realized all this. So that's why me is I've lived in both worlds. It wasn't until I left the auto industry that I really understood the value of love in business. Now, the second big question, the last big question is why love, and then what is love? The last two questions, why love and what is love? I think under why love, for an audience of believers like we have at Liberty, it's an easy answer in that it is the greatest commandment, right? We talk about the Great Commission, but Jesus said the summary of Scripture, of course, is to love one another. And you all know that. But I think from a strictly secular positioning, all of you who are going to be in business or in engineering, in the end of the day, if you're running it or you're in a department head, you are a department head, you have to hit the numbers too. And the good news is that according to all kinds of research, and I'll just share one massive study, love does work financially as well. And you should know that because it's important, because it's one of the number one reservations people have to lead with love is they think it's too soft. They're wrong, but that's what they think. So just so you know, there's a huge Gallup survey. If you can read that, 230 organizations, 73 countries, 49 industries, 1.8 million employees over about a 20-year period. When engagement scores go up, you can see what happens. Turnover goes down 59%. Customer loyalty goes up. Profitability, the key metric for most business leaders, goes up 21%. Productivity goes up 20%. Quality goes up 40%. So don't ever believe the lie that people will sometimes say that, oh, love doesn't work as a leadership principle. It absolutely does. And it happens to also be the number one commandment and why we as believers should lead with love. So the last question, and I'm going to go through these quickly because just I want to get to the Q&A, but the last question is, what is love? And I think one of the biggest problems with talking about love as a leadership principles is the word love is misunderstood. We think of it in the English language as the romantic love of Hollywood and what we see in so many movies. But as many of you know, the Bible was written in Greek, or the New Testament was written in Greek. And when they talked about love in the Bible, it was agape. Now, eros is the Greek word that represents romantic love. That's where the word erotic comes from. Or philos is brotherly love, a different kind of love. Or storge, it's a third Greek word, is the love between a parent and a child. But we're not talking about those loves. We're talking about agape, which is a verb. And when Jesus talks about love, they used agape. When Paul talks about love in 1 Corinthians, they used agape in the Bible. So what we did at Hershend and at SeaWorld is we actually defined love into 7 different words. We paraphrased it. You're familiar with the Paul verse from 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient. Love is kind. It's truthful, trusting, unselfish, forgiving, and dedicated. Now, these are our paraphrased words. But this basically defined what we expected from leaders in our business. And again, going to hit them really quickly. So kind of just take notes. But again, we'll go to Q&A and you can ask any question you want about it. The first one is patient, which is having self-control in difficult situations. If you could remember one thing about being patient, it's to praise in public and admonish in private. And I'll tell you, throughout your career, you will run into leaders who enjoy admonishing in public. And no matter what, it doesn't feel very good. And I don't care what level you are and what age you are. In fact, when I was CEO of Saab, I'm 36 years old. I'm running Saab North America. We had a great 3-year run, but we had a horrible quarter because of all kinds of issues I won't bore you with. But I got a phone call on Easter Sunday morning from my boss, who was the CEO of Saab Worldwide, who was a Swede based in Trollhättan, Sweden. He calls me up and just starts chewing me out over the quarter miss. In fact, he was so agitated that he ordered me to get on a plane. So I miss Easter service with my family, get on an airplane, fly all night, the red eye to Europe. You get it, you leave at 2 a.m. Eastern time. You get in about 6 a.m. Eastern time, which is 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And basically go to a meeting and I just get kind of ridiculed and lambasted in front of my peers. And look, I don't remember what was said, but I never forgot how that made me feel. And I just implore upon you as a leader, you have to hold people accountable. You have to sometimes take people to the woodshed. They have to be told they can do better, but try to do that privately as many times as possible. The second word is kindness, being kind. Now, what kindness isn't is being nice all the time. Because, and in many Christian organizations, many nonprofits, that is a problem. People tend to be more nice and give grace, but aren't always truthful, which is a word coming up. But I would encourage you to think about kindness more as being encouraging. And you see the word 3-to-1 ratio. Think in terms of being encouraging 3 times more than you're critical, because the human mind tends to be critical. And if I ask all of you, how many of you have had too much encouragement? I bet you there'd be very few showings of hands, because most of us don't get enough of it. And so the second point of attitude of gratitude, what I would encourage you to do is start every day in your quiet time thinking about what happened yesterday and how you can encourage that in other people. Jack Hershend, who I was my chairman for a long time at Hershend, he starts every day writing 3 thank you notes to people from yesterday that he wants to encourage. And they're just one quick page notes, but they always encourage something specifically that he saw in you. And you think about that, 3 letters a day, that's about 1,000 a year. Jack's been a leader for over 50 years. There's about 50,000 Jack Hershend letters out there, and they are like gold to employees. So always be enthusiastic and write those letters of encouragement. Very important. The third word is truthful. And this is that's of course Dolly and I, Dolly and me back quite a few years ago, but I'm still connected to her in some ways. We text every now and then, but I was able to see her 6 or 7 times a year when we were running her parks. And, there's a great Dolly story that was taught me so much about being truthful that I'll tell it in brief fashion. But basically, my first meeting with Dolly, I was a board member. I wasn't CEO yet. And she came to the board meeting, and the board was trying to, or the management was trying to get a theme park hotel approved. She wanted a hotel at Dollywood, but the board turned it down. And Dolly could have handled that in a lot of different ways. She could have said, hey, my name's on the wall. I want that hotel. But what she did instead, she went around the room. She started with the lowest level board member first, and she just listened and didn't react. And then she went to the chairman last, the most senior person in the room, and asked him why he didn't want the hotel. And Nelson, I'll imitate what happened. He has a really, really deep voice, really radio voice. And he said, well, Dolly, we don't want a hotel because hotels get a lower return on investment, and we don't want to distract management into something they've never done before. Could be distracting to the business. And she pauses for a minute and she said, well, Nelson, I have to say, you have the sexiest voice I have ever heard, but I don't agree with the word you've said. And so then she went on and kind of summarized what she had heard. And the principles that I want to leave you with on truthfulness is, first of all, it's intuitive. Don't shoot the messenger. You know that. That's just intuitive. But what's not intuitive is to talk last. She got the truth out because she talked last. And then she listened to understand. She went around the room and listened in a way that she showed people she was hearing them out. And then to make sure she got the truth later, she summarized why she disagreed with them, but she did so in a way that showed she was listening to them, which made us respect her and her respect us. And so these 4 tips are great on how you as a leader can create an environment of truthfulness, because it doesn't happen very often. So many times leaders talk first, they don't listen well. And I just encourage you that one really important aspect of leading with love is being truthful. And that balances being kind. So the next word is trusting, which is placing confidence in someone, another word of love. Now you can see this picture here. This is a hotel that my first job as CEO, I went back to that meeting. We addressed every board issue, and we got the resort approved, and now they're building a second one, and then they'll build a third one after that. But all kinds of engineering issues that, if we had another hour, I could go into interesting engineering things here. And then at the same time, the same year, we were building this massive roller coaster that was an engineering feat, first of its kind in the United States. But that was $20 million. The hotel was $100 million. So we were putting the company on the line. And my point to all of you is to create an environment of trust. There's three quick things I would say. If you want to be a loving leader that creates trusting environments, is create clarity. That first word, create clarity in who's doing what, who's responsible, who has to approve it, who has to be consulted, who has to be informed. Clarity creates trust. And as Brene Brown says, a lack of clarity is cruelty, but clarity creates trust. The second word is empowerment. Now you're early and you're going to be earlier in your career, and you may not lead things immediately, but as you become a leader, the more you can empower others is really important. In fact, Nelson Schwab, my chairman at SeaWorld for a while, he taught me a great question. What's the worst thing that can happen, and can I live with it? What's the worst thing that can happen, and can I live with it? I mean, that is a really, really powerful thing. And then the last one is Socratic versus autocratic. That's just go back to Dolly's question answering. Being Socratic is asking questions versus trying to always give the answer. So that's trusting. A couple more words, high level. Unselfishness is something you don't hear in business very often, and it's thinking of yourself less. And what you saw on that television show, the first word there, share it forward, that was our foundation. That actually everything those employees got in that show was out of a foundation, and its funding was started from the employees. The employees had to give first, and then the company matched it dollar for dollar, and we created this pool of money for all of our employees in need. And just keep that in the back of your mind when you are a leader. It's the kind of thing you can do. But look, even in the early stages of your career, if you can't be involved in a foundation, you can still be unselfish, and it takes various forms. You can write thank you notes. You can encourage people with words of affirmation. You can donate dollars to them, help them with personal things. And there's a phrase I like to use from Andy Stanley, who's a pastor in Atlanta. He always says, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. So sometimes being unselfish means choosing someone you can help, and not, even though you can't do that for everyone. So do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. That's being unselfish. And then forgiving is the sixth word, next to last word, and that's releasing the grip of the grudge. And look, this is an art in business. It's not a science, because you can't always forgive people, because they still have to be held accountable if they make mistakes. But I will tell you this, even though it doesn't always work out well, and I've forgiven people that there are great stories of what has happened in their life after. But I've also tried to forgive people who were alcoholics or had drug abuse problems, and we would send them to rehab 2 or 3 times. We paid at first, and they paid, and sometimes it didn't work out, and we had to let them go because we had to move forward, and sometimes it didn't end well. But my point to you is, even though it's not always clear when you should do it and when you shouldn't, I would just encourage you to forgive anyway, which is the last point there. And then the last high level word of love is being dedicated. And that's being dedicated to values in all circumstances. I would just encourage you to think in terms of do versus be. And all organizations, if you're leading, you have do goals. You have to hit a sales target. You have to get a project done on time. It has to be on time and on budget, et cetera, et cetera. But not many organizations talk about the be goals, which is what kind of leader you want to be. And at Hershend and at SeaWorld, these 7 words that I've quickly touched upon, these were our be goals. We were dedicated to these words and we taught them, we defined them, we measured them. In fact, raises were not only hitting your do goals, but you had to hit your be goals. And you were evaluated by the people who worked for you of whether you were hitting your be goals or not. So this is a very, very high level overview of what is love, the paraphrase of 1 Corinthians 13. And to be dedicated, it means really putting into work in your culture and in your own life to be loving to other people. So if you want any follow-up from this, I just obviously scratched the surface, but there is the book as mentioned. You can get it on joelmanby.com. You can also get it on Amazon, or it's also on Audible if you like listening to books. And there's a lot more there. And I also blog, and you can follow me on social media if you want to ask questions. I can do it there if we don't get to them today. But as we open it up to Q&A, I want to just do 2 things before we open it up. One is to congratulate you. I'm excited to see believers who are going into engineering and going into business, because America needs more believers in those fields. And don't ever believe that you can't be a minister as an engineer or as a business person. I just fundamentally don't agree that you have to go to a third world country and focus on the Great Commission to be a minister. And we need people like you, and we need engineers, and we need business people in this country. So I want to encourage you that you're doing the right thing, but also encourage you that you will run into people who will almost defeat your spirit on leading with love, and you'll have bad bosses. It's just going to happen. And when you do, I just always want you to remember this little talk, this short talk, and that Joel told you that you can lead with love, and you may have to leave the department, you may have to leave the leader, you may have to leave the organization, but it does work. And I just want to encourage you in that regard. So with that, let's open it up for Q&A. I'd love to answer your questions.
Yeah, Joel, thanks so much for what you shared. And like you said, you are just scratching the surface, and we could probably spend the next 3 hours, 3 days, asking questions and delving into some things. But we have 4 students that we've asked to put together some questions, and they would be kind of representative, I think, of our student body. And I just want to go down the line, and they're going to introduce themselves just so you get an idea of where they're coming from and what their major is, and then we'll just have a conversation. So we're going to start with Jordan here.
Good morning, Mr. Is this on? Okay. Good morning, Mr. Manby. Thank you for
Jordan.
being here this morning. My name is Jordan Stewart. I'm a second-year mechanical engineer, and I'm the president of the Themed Entertainment Association here at Liberty. And I have to ask, what is your favorite roller coaster? Just to
I think Manta at SeaWorld is one of my favorites, just because it was so unique, and the way you come into the water and kind of the water sprays on you. And I was involved a little bit in helping the engineering, so I guess it's really close to me. But as far as value for the dollar, it would have to be Wild Eagle at Dollywood, because I'm going to say we only spent $12 million on that, when if Disney had done a ride like that, it would have been $120 million. These rides are extremely expensive, but we did a really good job theming it at high value. And that's one thing as an engineer in the business that is very, very highly valued. If you can get great entertainment content and yet still bring it in under budget or at budget, it's a great thing. So that would be my 2 answers.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
Good morning, Mr. Manby. I'm Olivia Crawford. I am a student. I'm a junior in the School of Business, and my major is entrepreneurship. I work
Great.
closely with the Entrepreneurship Club in Actus, and I am also a part of the developing team for the Creationeering Cafe in the School of Engineering.
Excellent. Wow, that's great, Olivia.
I just want to start off by thanking you for your time this morning. My name is Nathan Adato. I am a junior in the project management major as well as the supply chain program here at Liberty. I also am the chief business coordinator for our Enactus Entrepreneurship Club.
That's fantastic, Nathan. Good for you.
Good morning.
I can hear you.
Good morning. My name is Kobe Hagan. I'm a second-year student here at Liberty University. I'm currently a double major in finance and biotechnology, and I'm the president of our chapter of Enactus at Liberty.
Wow. Kobe, that's fantastic. You know, when people ask me and they don't know what they want to do, and they say, what should I major in? I do say finance, because no matter what you do in life, it's good to be able to read a balance sheet and an income statement. And even if you just have your own business as an entrepreneur, obviously, and certainly biotech is the rising tide. So one thing I learned at SeaWorld, you always want to be in a rising tide, business or area. And you know, animals under human care is not the rising tide. There's a lot of hair on it. There's a lot of counter opinions. Some have validity, some don't, but still it's just not the rising tide. And SeaWorld was we were always under pressure because of that. So I think being in biotech, it's a really wise place to be.
Thank you.
Excellent. So we're going to ask Olivia to start us off. You know, being a Christian university, the question is often revolves around faith and business, and how do we integrate our faith with our job and workplace. So Olivia, why don't you take it?
So I said, as Christians, sometimes we must make the decision to sacrifice an opportunity because of our faith. As you're putting God above everything else, can you recall a time in your life, in your career, when you had to sacrifice an opportunity to put God first?
Yeah, I did. And I do remember. And there's two answers to that. On the professional side, I never got in a situation where somebody just asked me to do something unethical that I had to say, I'm not going to do that. I did have a leader at SeaWorld who was very dysfunctional and abusive, who asked me to do things that I wasn't willing to do, like another cost cut that would lay off another 300 people that I didn't think we could take. I said no to that. And at the end of the day, that cost me my job there. And we just fundamentally disagreed. And so I resigned because we could not get along or agree. But it wasn't because it was unethical. It just wasn't the right thing for the business. And he was too bottom line oriented. So it's still related to your question that sometimes you just have to say no. I would also say I waited too long. He was abusive to me and to my team. And I probably should have put a stop to it sooner. But I wanted to succeed so badly. I didn't want to fail that I think I waited a little too long. But I honestly, what I would watch out for more in your life is take these 7 words of love. If for me, they drive every morning in my quiet time. I'm looking at those same words to how I want to lead, but also how I want to lead my personal life. And my biggest mistakes that if I could go back and change were my own personal failures on not always being truthful, either to a significant other or a child or a friend. They were my own implosions. And I think always focus so much, make sure and focus on what you can control, which is your set of values. And if I could do life over again, I would always make sure I don't compromise on those values. And I think I just grew up I grew up very, very poor. And I think I was just so driven to be quote unquote successful that it caused me to make some bad personal decisions, kind of workaholism, never spending enough time with my family and things like that. That's where I have more regrets of not sticking to my set of values. So that's what I would encourage you to do is, yeah, worry about other people, but take care of what you can control, which is your own value adherence.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, we're going to jump over to here to Kobe, and it really ties into with what you were just saying, Joel, about taking care of the priorities in your own life. Kobe.
Yeah, so like Olivia had mentioned, like you had mentioned in your book, you had noted that earlier in your career, like the stress and demand of your work life had really brought you to a hard place with your family. And I was just wondering, like, what are some things you do on like a daily basis to maintain like your mental health and then also the most important relationships in your life?
Yeah. Again, I almost think I'm speaking to you all more out of somebody who from a position that I didn't always handle it well, and I would not want to give the impression that I nailed it. I would say for you not to do what I did in workaholism is to put limits on it. When I'm on my game, you put the big rocks in first in your calendar, meaning time with your significant other, time with your best friends, time with your children once you get to that stage, if you get to that stage, and then stick to it. And then the work will take care of itself, because the people around you who you love, they don't see your intention. They only see your actual activity. And I had great intentions that I love God first, and I love my family second, and I love my job third. But as my family looked at me and God looked at me, I'm sure he or she would say, Joel loved his work more, because that's where all his time and energy went. So put parameters on it, put the big rocks in your calendar first, and then absolutely stay physically and emotionally healthy. Work out, get the stress out of your system. When I went bad, I stopped working out. I stopped having quiet time. Stay away from, alcohol and things like that can numb your true senses. I'm not saying you can never have a drink. I'm just saying don't abuse it, because there was certainly a point in my life where the stress of the job caused me to cover up pain, and that was a bad thing. So you can control all that. In the end of the day, though, you have to ask yourself this question: am I willing to take the consequences of putting my family first or my health first? And if I get released from my job or demoted from my job because I'm willing to do this, you have to take the consequences. I never found that to be the case, but you have to come to peace with that, because you don't want to lose your health and you don't want to lose your family. The good news is, I think in today's world, the power has shifted to the employee. You read about all the labor shortages, and the wages are going up faster than inflation. I do think companies are much, much more respectful of family time and quality time than they were when I was your age. 20, 25 years ago, it was a completely different power structure. And the good news is it's shifted towards the employee, and it's shifted towards having a rational lifestyle. So I think you'll be in great shape. But that would be my advice.
Yeah, so Joel, everything you're talking about really goes back to what does God want you to do, and what is his plan for the priorities in your life. Jordan has a question related to that.
Yeah, so you took on the leadership role of CEO at SeaWorld when the park and the company was just at a kind of an interesting time, just with controversy and struggle. So was that something that you felt called to do? And was it a difficult decision to leave Hershend when it was such a solid corporation with like just Christian principles? And how can we discern God's will in our lives, even when it may seem like it's not the best decision on paper?
Right. It's hard to discern sometimes, because God, at least for me, never spoke audibly. But I would always, look to the providence story of the Bible, knowing that good is going to win over evil. I would look at what am I breaking any commandments in doing this? And I just look at basically fruits of the Spirit, the words of love. Is there anything contrary to those? And then after that, I would do what God was putting on my heart. As long as my heart was in the right place, to me, the answer was, if I'm passionate about it and I want to do it, then that is God saying it's a calling. I went to Jack Hershend with the SeaWorld opportunity. He just asked, and he was head of Hershend at the time, and he said, "Do you feel God is calling you to this?" And I said, "Yeah, I wanted to take Love Works to a much bigger platform. SeaWorld's, call it, 4 or 5 times larger than Hershend. It was a public company, not a private company. I always wanted to be a public company CEO. Not sure that was a great goal, but it was on my heart. And so as long as I felt like my heart was in the right place, then I followed the passion of my heart. So for those who are listening or watching and you're not sure what you want to do, that's okay. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 22. I still wanted to be a pro baseball player when I was 22. So you just have to do every single job that comes before you, learn from it, and God will direct you, because you'll learn what you're passionate about and what you're not. But that's how I try to discern God's will, is kind of where I had energy and where He was giving me energy and passion.
Right. So God's given you that passion. He's given you that desire, maybe even to work at a corporation in a public company. And, how do you discern God's will? So you say, look at your passion, like your desires, that if you're following God, if you're loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, then He's going to put those desires in you, and you follow that. So, that's part of, discerning God's will. I think also along with that, I know you would agree, is that the people in your life, you went to Jack and you said, this is what I feel God's put in my heart, and you're asking for his input because you trust him. And so the people in your life that are close to you, that love you, are part of that process, I think, of discerning God's will. And why don't you jump in there, Nate, because you had a question regarding mentors.
Before Nate asked, though, I want to reinforce what you just said. Is a group that I didn't mention was my accountability group, and I had 3 men. I mentioned in the book that we went to Harvard together. I went to Harvard Business School. I didn't mention that, but I went to Albion College, small liberal arts school for undergrad, and then Harvard for business school. And we met there at a Bible study, and we've been best friends our entire life. And we meet monthly by Zoom call, and have for now, it's approaching 38 years. So we've been through thick and thin together. I did go to them and ask for their counsel as well. And as it turned out, if I had to do it all over again, I don't know that I would do it because of the way it turned out. But I learned a lot from it, and I think God was still in it all the way.
That's incredible.
Go ahead. Sorry, Nate. Nathan.
It's perfect, right into my question, which is who are those people who have made the biggest impact in your life? And kind of the second part to that is, how do we continue to find people like those and find mentors? Because it's all about growing and learning from the people around us, especially in a place like where we are in college.
Yeah, it's a great question. I've always had, I actually have 2 older mentors, and then I have I have 2 different accountability groups, but one that's really been steady for 35 years, as I just mentioned. But the accountability at the senior level, it organically happened. I mean, I wanted it in my heart, but God, I prayed for it. So I would just continue to pray that God will put a mentor in your life, and be open to it. Don't try to force it. It'll happen. And one was Jack Hershend, who was the chairman of Hershend Entertainment. And when my father passed away, he really became my second father. And we still, even though I left Hershend and went to SeaWorld, we still talk at least every 60 days. And he was the most senior. He's almost 90 now. I'm 62. So there's about a 30-year difference. And then when I was in Atlanta, another mentor that's about 10 years ahead of me with kids or jobs, and he's very entrepreneurial. So God put him in my life, and he's been very instrumental. His name's Larry Powell. And then on the accountability, I would really try to work to find peers that are part of your same sphere of life, kind of the same age. And if you're getting married or having significant others in that same sphere of life, but it only works if you are completely deadly honest. And so I think that's the hard part to find, especially sometimes we Christians, we have a hard time being completely truthful. I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but that's at least what I've observed. And then if the truth does come out, sometimes the church environment will kind of shoot their dead or shoot the wounded. And, I think it's important to find a group that you can be completely honest with what's going on, as well as having those mentors. And I would pray for it and be open to it. And, the Harvard group, we kind of lost touch after 5 years. And our 5-year reunion, after that we graduated, we lost touch until our 5-year reunion. We committed we would not let that happen anymore. And that's when we scheduled the monthly calls that we've had, ever since then. So that's what I would advise.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think along with what you said is not just praying about it, but being intentional and like setting up an intentional time when you're going to get together. So even now, you guys at your age, in this environment that you're in, ask yourself, who are the people around me that are heading in the same direction, that have the same love for Jesus that I have, and then be intentional of just spending that time. We're going to meet on Monday at 6 p.m., and maybe you meet while you're in school, but then the rest of your life, maybe you continue that. Maybe Monday at 6 p.m. or 7, and you just get it on your calendar. Because I know, Joel, you'd say if it's not on the calendar, it's probably not going to happen.
No, it's a tactical point, but it's critically important that we set the call. We do have a set time, and if the set time doesn't work, we find out what does work on our previous call. So we're not going back and forth with emails, and we have the call regardless. And if you miss a couple, you get a phone call from one of the four, and they've held me accountable. I went through, if you read the second edition of the book, I went through a really, really tough period in my life and made decisions I'm not proud of. I was not healthy for a while, and they held me accountable to it, and they made me get my act together before I could rejoin the calls. And it was tough love, but we need that in our lives. And I pretty much guarantee all of you will go through something in your life where, we go through ups and downs that are very, very difficult to get through. And that's when you need that accountability, and you need those really, really close friends. And, I know this, I don't know why God's telling me to say this, but this is obvious, but just don't believe the social media lie. I think social media has done so much to hurt mental health and depression, because we look at these people who are painting this wonderful tale on social media that's, as we all know, not really true, or not really completely true, I guess I should say. Just remember, everybody has their issues. Be gracious and be thankful for all the great that you do have in your life and all the wonderful things you do have in your life. And, focus on an attitude of gratitude, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, excellent. Joel, you mentioned social media. How would you recommend students view social media? And I know we're looking at two different generations, right? And so
Right.
our generation's going to look at it different.
I feel like a dinosaur in a way, talking to you guys about it. I know I have gray hair now and I'm 62, but there's some good things about it. I think keeping in touch with people, and I think the comparison aspect of it is really damaging. Comparing ourselves to others in any way, shape, or form does nothing but breed discontent. And look, I still struggle as a 62-year-old. I look at my Harvard classmates and some of what they've done and achieved, and you may look at my success and say, well, how can I feel that way? Whoops, sorry. I thought I had my alerts turned off. It still can be a sin for all of us. So that's what I don't like about social media. And I just would stay away from any comparison and just focus on the positives and having an attitude of gratitude.
Right. So it gets back to really just knowing God, knowing His Word. It reminds me of a verse that says, Paul says it. He says, "He who compares himself one to another is not wise."
Yeah,
And so you look at God's truth. God's telling us that, and social media, a lot of it is about that comparison. And God saying that's not wise. We have 5 minutes left here, Joel. These guys have like 500 questions, but you guys jump in. You got like a burning question that you want to hit in the last 5 minutes. You guys are here.
Well, I'll tell you, I can go. I'll go as long as you need me, even if you have to cut the broadcast. I'll stay as long as you want to get questions answered. So just know that I want to be as helpful as possible.
Oh, thanks so much. All right, guys, jump in.
Well, I guess I'll go if no one else wants to. So I guess, I don't know, I'm a finance major, and I was just wondering what's the best piece of financial advice you have to offer to us as college students and young adults, and then also how can we best prepare ourselves for our careers?
Well, from a business standpoint, I've already said it, I think, is learn to read a balance sheet and income statement. And that question I said quickly that Nelson Schwab said, anytime you're looking at opportunities, what's the worst case scenario and can you live with it, is a great way to think about difficult financial decisions, whether it's buying your house or doing something in business. I think for your personal life, I know this is obvious, but it doesn't happen all the time, is always spend less than you make. And no matter what, early in my career, did not make much money coming out of Albion before I went to Harvard. And I always spent a lot less than I made, and always put away 10% every year. And, the time value of money, building early, saving early is a true mathematical formula. So that's just a couple things that come to my mind that are pretty simple, but they're hard to do when you're young.
Well, thank you.
So I do have to ask, do you still keep up with all of the employees at Hershon that you spent time with on Undercover Boss?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. Back to that point of do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. At SeaWorld, we had 21,000 employees. Hershon had about 12,000. Obviously, there's no way I can know everyone or keep in touch with everyone, but I always picked a few. And to answer your question, in that I kept in touch with Richard, who was the street washer, and then Albert, who was the one who cried at the end. Still kept in touch with him. In fact, unfortunately, Richard, the street washer, passed away of a heart attack in December at only 55 years old. And I had I never communicated with his wife. She reached out to me after he died and asked for help with their estate planning and some legal issues that came up. So, and then Albert's no longer at Hershon, but he's still in the theme park, he's in entertainment. So yeah, I still keep in touch with him and try to be helpful. And again, just pick some people. We talked about mentors and peers, but as you age, it's also important to pick people that you can help mentor or just be available to if they have questions. But I do the same from SeaWorld. SeaWorld was much more difficult situation, but there's a few people at SeaWorld I still keep in touch with on a very regular basis.
I have a question for you on the same topic as mentorship. I was looking and wondering from a CEO standpoint if you have a so-called mentor company that you look up to, a particular team or organization that you took some of their values and put them into your own way of working around leadership and your CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Early in my career, it was anything to do with servant leadership. So, I enjoyed stuff by Greenleaf or another one is Jim Collins, who is a very famous business author. He's a little older, but he had some great books that were really servant leadership books disguised, like Good to Great and How the Mighty Fall. In today's world, I'm actually part of John Maxwell's Maxwell Leadership Organization now. In my retirement, I speak on Love Works. I go to his events. I kind of work the C-suite part of his organization, and all of John's material in the Maxwell Leadership Organization is very good. It's very aligned. They don't call it Love Works. They have a different set of words, but it's very aligned. So if I had to pick one today, that's probably the one. Not probably, it is the one I would point you to because they have all kinds of great material there.
Olivia, were you asking also, like, is there a particular company that you value their culture and the way they operate as a company? What would you say?
Okay, yeah, and I'm sorry if that was your question, but Maxwell Leadership's more you can go to and get leadership information. As far as admiring companies, Hershen still is run that way. Chick-fil-A and the QSR fast food industry is definitely that way. I would say on the automotive side, I do think there are some, if you ever go retail, there's massive retail organizations, and there are many organizations that are run very, very well in the automotive sector. So I think just by sector, you can figure it out by going online, looking at their values. I wouldn't hesitate to ask to interview some of the employees. You don't have to just talk to the boss who's hiring you. You can ask to talk to a few employees and talk about the culture and so forth. But these are all ways to make sure you are entering into a good fit as a company.
All right, we're about to wrap up. Some of these students have to go to class, unfortunately, although this has been class, and we thank you. But some closing comments, Joel, that maybe on your mind as you're thinking about these students going out into the workforce, some things that you would recommend for them.
I think, first of all, if there was a burning question that you really wanted answered and you couldn't, you can reach out to me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'll get to it. I may not get to it quickly, but I'll get to your question, or Facebook. I have an official site. Either way, probably LinkedIn's better. So that's the first point. Second point is I want to reiterate what I said earlier. Is this just that I want to congratulate where you're headed, but also encourage you. I want to leave with that again, that you guys are in the right space from a career choice standpoint, but you also will face challenges. You will face difficult bosses, difficult business situations. You will probably go through a failure or two. I certainly have. And there's nothing wrong with that. You will learn from your failures and just keep moving forward, and always keep your eyes on the values, because the B goals, remember, if you don't have to use my 7 words, obviously, but pick your own 5 to 7 words of your B goals. What kind of person do you want to be? And focus on that, because that you can control 100%. You can't control whether your ventures, your startup's successful, or whether you get the promotion or not, or how much money you make. You cannot control all of those things, but you can control who you are. And again, my biggest regrets is where I dropped the ball or failed there. And that would be my last encouraging comment to you, is get your B goals established and stick to them no matter what. And that leads to contentment a lot more than anything financially or business-wise that you could ever achieve.
Yeah, I love that you said earlier that, make those B goals, the big rocks that you're putting in first, that those become the priority, and then everything else filters around those things.
Yes.
One question we like to ask, Joel, is how can we pray for you?
I think just pray that, honestly, I just had a new grandson, and both my brothers have cancer. So I think just praying for their recovery and their health. I'm going up to see them tonight. We have a rock band that we used to play in together, so we're going to play some music and have some fun. And I think just pray for the health of those I love. It would be great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to ask Jordan if you'll pray for Joel Manby here. And thank you so much for the gift of your time today. We are so grateful for taking the time to do that, and even offering to connect through LinkedIn, through questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the prayer.
Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this wonderful day. I thank you for the time that we've had this morning with Mr. Manby. Thank you for what you've put in his heart to share with us this morning. I pray for all the students that are here and watching online, that they can be encouraged by what Mr. Manby has told us, and that we can truly take to heart the advice that he's given us and things that he's said, and we can implement those in our relationships, our leadership positions, just our future careers, that we can truly make a difference because we are set apart, God, by you, and that we can truly spread your love and spread your kindness to those who may not know you. And I just pray that we can build those relationships, God. I just pray for Mr. Manby's brothers, that they can be healed, that you can be with them, that you can heal them with your strength and your love, God. I know that you can do anything, God. And so I just pray for their comfort and their contentment, that they can stay focused on you. And I just pray for all these students that they can go out and live their best for you, God, and that we can serve you through all of our actions. And in your precious holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you
Joel,
very much.
thanks so much. I hope we get to do this again sometime. Maybe we can do it live.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You all have a great rest of the day.
All right.
And a great rest of the week.
Thanks.